Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'anite.com. Today is Tuesday the 18th of May 2021 and I'd like to continue with the series of talks which I've been giving on the surahs between 50 and 114, the end of the Qur'an. If you'd like to know why I'm giving this series of talks, then I invite you to go through my work on the what they call in English the mysterious letters, which is a 7-hour presentation, and you will need a pen and a piece of paper and possibly quite a lot of time. But in any case, we're up to Surah 70 and that's what we're going to get on with. So let's just jump into it. Surah 70. A petitioner asked about a punishment to come. Now, there's a reason why I use the word petitioner. The word here is going to repeat later in this surah. And in order to give the reader in English a sense of the connection between these two parts of the surah, I chose a word which would be correct in both instances. So that's why I've used this word. It means somebody who asks, but it also can mean somebody who asks for something. A petitioner asked about a punishment to come to the false claimers of guidance. There is none to avert it from God, owner of the means of ascent. Now, the punishment to come is the Day of Judgment, and this is something from which we are sort of separated in especially in this society where we're given to understand that there are no consequences. I mean, we were kind of going there in the 1960s and probably in the 1920s, but now the sort of level of delusion is almost psychotic, where people think that all that matters is their opinion. Well, no, there are things which are actual facts. If you take a brick and go to the 10th floor of a block of flats and throw it over the balcony, it's not going to go up, it's going to go down. It's just what's going to happen. And if you keep living day after day after day, at some point you're going to die. It's a fact. It's not opinion based. And the judgment is something which we are born in a way with a sense of accountability. I mean, those of us who aren't psychopaths, and we know that there is always some sort of payment day for what one does. And we see in the physical universe that things equate out. If you destroy this, it turns into that. If you change this, it turns into this. There are laws, cause and effect, and quite clearly in the moral universe, those equations are not resolved in this life. There are people who are completely evil and seem to get away with it, and people who are good seem to get what they get. But quite clearly, there is another aspect to this, and those of us who are believers, and I do think believing it's almost like a genetic condition rather than anything else. We intuit that, and those who are not believers, or at least those who are honest among them, they claim not to. Well, my position is I don't argue with atheists, because, and if you take, for example, as a metaphor, the magic eye pictures, those pictures with lots of dots. Both the atheist and the believer, we look at that picture, and the atheist says to us, "Look, dots, I've counted them, there's 437 million of them, and that's all there are, they're dots, and I've added them up and taken them away and created algorithms, and dots are what there are." And to some extent, I agree with that. That's right, I do agree there are dots, and I agree that dots are what you see. But when I look at it, I can also see, apart from the dots, I can also see, whatever it is, the Tower of Pisa, or Eiffel Tower, or Marilyn Monroe. Well, the atheist is telling me that he doesn't see Marilyn Monroe or the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and I agree. Well, I admit that he probably telling the truth. Why that is, I don't know. I don't know why one man can see it, one man can't. But just because he can't see it doesn't have any impact upon the fact that I can see it. And for me to deny the fact that I can see it in order to ingratiate myself with him, it would be as much a lie as it were for him to pretend that he can see it, and when in fact he can't. So we are either sides of a line, and I think when one believes in God and you realize that that's how you're made, then you just have to kind of choose your line and be happy with it. So that's my position on it. I'm not here to convince atheists of anything, and I accept that they see dots, and that's it's just a fact. That's what they see. To continue, To the false claimers of guidance, there is none to avert it from God, owner of the means of ascent. I'm just going to stop here. Means of ascent. Now, I'm sure there exist many interpretations of this particular collocation. However, my own view is that we read many times in the Qur'an that we have the word darajat, which means degrees. So, men are on different sort of levels of their understanding of their in their walk with the Lord, as it were, to use a sort of a Christianism. How that works and why certain men go where they go, I don't know. But I do know that there are levels, and that it is God who guides. It's not Muhammad or Jesus or anything else. God guides or he doesn't guide. So that's how I see the means of ascent, the stairway, as it were. There may exist other equally or more convincing interpretations of this, but this is my own personal view. The angels and the Spirit ascend to him in a day the measure whereof is 50,000 years. So be thou patient with comely patience. Comely patience, this is an interesting term. We have this in Surah 12, the story of Joseph. It's what Jacob uses in the occasions when he first hears that Joseph has been, the wolf has killed Joseph, and then again when the sons come back and say that that this and this and this has happened, and he's still grieving for his son, but he turns to God and states comely patience is the thing that is the thing to have. The day of judgment has been promised for a very long time, of course. However, the fact is that individual men's lives, certainly in the age in which we live, we're apportioned an amount, and it's very rarely over 100 years. So actually, in the greater scheme of things, what is your life? It is but a vapor. Today it is, and then it's gone. So on the actual day of judgment, referencing other parts of the Qur'an, it will seem that we'd lived only a morning or a half a day, a few hours. So in this time, it seems that it takes a long time, but God sees things from a point of view where 50,000 years is just nothing. So whilst we are, as it were, trapped in the sort of subjectivity of our temporal life, the thing to have is patience. Because anyway, we're going to what I call the zinger, in the butcher's shop. I don't know if you have them anymore, but you used to have, certainly in the 70s when I was growing up, that sort of fluorescent purple light that eventually there'd be a fly sort of flying around, and sooner or later that fly would go into bzzzt. We're all going to the zinger. There is no doubt about it. So it's not a matter of if you're going. It's just a matter of when and in what condition. And many times in the Qur'an we have the recipient of the Qur'an being told to be patient. If we show you this, and if you see it, you may not see it. But the fact is that the day of judgment, we're all going to see that. And that's what this is about. In fact, most of the surahs in this portion of the Qur'an reference either destruction or the day of judgment as something which... Okay, I'm back again. All right, if I just cut there, it's because having a technical issue with the camera. To continue. They see it as far off, but we see it as near. The day the sky will be like molten brass, and the mountains like wool, and no loyal friend will ask of a loyal friend. We live at the moment under a system of laws, physical laws, wrongly called the laws of nature. When the end comes, those laws will change. Now, obviously, the scientists, the materialists, they take all of those laws as a given. They say, oh, there they are. That's reality. They choose to sort of disregard the fact that laws imply a lawgiver and, in fact, a law enforcer. And what we find in the Qur'an is that when we get to the end of this age in which these laws are enforced, things will change. They'll change to something that we will understand, but they will be different. Now, at this point, what happens The sky will be like molten brass, so that the form of the sky will change. And the mountains like wool. Well, what's wool? Wool is fluffy and light, and the mountains now are heavy and firm. So there's going to be a change in the sort of DNA of what we might call the laws of nature. I don't like that term, but that's what we call them. And no loyal friend will ask of a loyal friend. So all of those relationships that seem so important now, and especially at this time, when the velvet glove is coming off the iron fist, as it were. And we can see that the ruling elites, they're all sort of, tied in together into these networks, into these fraternities, into these groups that they think are going to save them, that they think make them safe. And it's a natural human drive to wish to be safe. In fact, in the Qur'an, the word for faith is related to safety. It's a natural thing. We're built with it. It's just where we seek safety. That's really the measure of how and what how we operate and what we are. To continue. And no loyal friend will ask of a loyal friend. They will be given sight of them. Now, that's verse 11. I think I have a note on this. Perhaps sight of the angels and the spirit at 7:40, but possibly refers to friends gaining sight of one another. To continue. The lawbreaker will wish that, should he be ransomed from the punishment of that day by his sons and his consort, or his wife, and his brother and his kinsman who sheltered him, and whoso is in the earth altogether, then it might deliver him. So at this point, when this shift happens, people will, all those relationships, all those, sureties, all those things you can, take to the bank, all that's gone, all that's going away. And any man, will wish that he could, any man who has broken the laws of God and lived by breaking them, he's going to wish that he could, put things right at the price of every single thing that he thought was dear to him and that he valued. That's going to be, you see, there's a shift first in the physical realm, as you were, the laws of nature, and now there's a shift in the social laws. So it's not that there aren't going to be any laws. There'll be laws, but these are going to be new laws. And whoso is in the earth altogether, that it might deliver him. No, indeed, it is a blazing fire. So this then is the reality, a blazing fire. I'm not going to go into it right now, but the word which I translate as no, indeed, kalla, occurs a certain amount of times in the Qur'an. I've been through every single one of them. And they have almost like a logical function as well as a linguistic one. But you'll find that in the notes to my work. To continue. Removing the scalp. Calling him who turned and went away and gathered and hoarded. So all of that stuff again, relating back to safety or security. We as humans, we are made that way. We tend to look to our security for the things that we've got and the things that we own, etc. And what this is showing is how fleeting and how fickle those things are. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having some good things in this life, but if one for the price of that sacrifices the eternity, then what kind of investment is it really? To continue. Man was created anxious, when evil touches him impatient, and when good touches him withholding, save the performers of duty. Now I'm just going to stop here because this is quite a long bit. The performers of duty, now this is based on the same root as from which we get ṣalāt, and so the traditionalist interpretation of this is save those people who basically pray 5 times a day. Now, I'm not saying there aren't very good people who pray 5 times a day according to the traditionalists' externally derived format, because it's not in the Qur'an. As he will say, it's one of his proof points why one needs this other thing. His problem is, of course, that the foundation for his religion claims to be complete, and yet by importing these values from external literature, he's really belying that fundamental claim. However, what I would say here is, whilst I accept there have been many good men who have prayed 5 times a day, there have been many good men who haven't prayed 5 times a day, and also there have been quite a lot of really bad people who've prayed 5 times a day. So praying 5 times a day, if this is somehow the arbiter of what follows, then I don't think that that's true. I don't think that logically that actually holds if you're going to take that value. However, if we have a duty, if as I claim, as I assert, as I explain, that salat is duty in a broad sense, and one might say, well, okay, well, prayer is a duty. I would accept that it is, and I think that it is. But just because oranges are a fruit does not mean that all fruits are oranges. And this is the kind of 8-year-old logic that you're supposed to just swallow at the hand of the traditionalist. Sure, what we have is a duty. If you see men on their deathbeds who have lived a wrong life, they're not sitting there wishing they'd jumped up and down 5 times a day. Although, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. What people tend to regret on their deathbeds is that they didn't do what they were meant to do. That thing that you're meant to do. You see, that is duty. It's a duty. It's much closer. It's much closer to the idea of dharma, a general duty. And I've mentioned this many times before, but I'm going to, hit this point again. We have in the Qur'an, and make use of patience and duty. وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. So you've got 2 nouns, patient, as-sabr, with the article, with the definite article, and as-salat, also with the definite article. Now, the traditionalists say, you see, it says the prayer, as he would have it. And what he's really doing is trading on the fact that you, as an English speaker, you don't understand that abstract nouns in Arabic take a definite article. And also you've got as-sabr right there with a definite article. And you've got one verb taking these 2 objects. What he's saying is that sabr is this, and I agree, and it must be this, abstract noun, this idea of something which is, what is patience? How do you have patience? So how do you have patience? Well, it depends, doesn't it? If you're running a marathon, then you kind of grit your teeth and you keep going, okay? But if you're studying for an exam, then you don't grit your teeth, keep running. You do something else. It's situation dependent. And the way that this word salat is used in the Qur'an, it can only be situation dependent. And the Qur'an itself uses it as, well, it certainly uses it. What this is like in chess, it's like a fork. It's like if you move one piece, then you lose both. Or you basically, you can't move this piece without, jeopardizing another piece. Well, that's the grammatical situation that the traditionalist is in, because he needs it to be both, but it can't be both. It can only really technically be this one thing. And the reason why he can't have it, and what I'm saying by one thing, this abstract noun, and the reason why he can't accept that is because the religion's gone. So he's really in a bind. And in a way, I do kind of sympathize. And part of what he's doing is he's saying, well, then how do you pray? Well, then how do you cut the grass? How do you comb your hair? How do you paint the windowsills? It gets very ridiculous very quickly. And, I think it's meant to. If you're asking my personal opinion, this is a sort of medieval psyop, and it was really clever. But if you look at the Qur'an, the way it works grammatically, this example, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, and make use of patience and salat. Now, you can't have these as being different types. Doesn't work. You can't say make use of hope and a Big Mac. Doesn't work. You could have hope and fear, or hope and, I don't know, whatever it is. Compassion, or you could have Big Mac and fries, but you can't mix and match those 2 types because they can't work together with the same verb. It just doesn't make sense. All of that to say, what we have here is save the performers of duty. And again, the traditionalist is going to say, these are people who pray according to this externally derived format. And yet, as we read this, we'll see that there are people who do keep this format and who totally don't, don't comport with what follows. Anyway, so let's just have a look at it. Save the performers of duty, those who are constant in their duty, and those in whose wealth is a due known, for the petitioner and the one deprived, and are those who confirm the day of judgment, and are those who of the punishment of their Lord are in dread. The punishment of their Lord is not that from which there is safety, and are those who preserve their chastity, save with their wives or what their right hands possess, for then are they not blameworthy. But whoso seeks beyond that, it is they who are the transgressors. And are those who are to their trusts and their covenant attentive, and are those who in their witness are upright, and are those who preserve their duty. Those are in gardens honoured. Now, what I'm saying is that one who performs his duty is someone who does all of those things. It's not that duty as ṣalāt is like this bolt-on. It's that it's a broader encompassing thing. And so that would be my argument. I mean, I'm not saying that prayer is wrong. I'm just saying that, to take the fruit thing, whilst all oranges are fruits, not all fruit are oranges. And this is just a basic kind of logical error that's become made part of the culture. So anyway, that's what I want to say. Now, I'm going to go back to one other point here. Yes, because I'm asked this quite a lot, as if, I should become some sort of expert on this particular question. Yes, save with their wives or what their right hands possess. Now, people say, well, the Qur'an is, it's advancing slavery. Certainly what your right hands possess is talking about people that are owned, that are slaves. That's quite correct. But to say that just because the Qur'an deals with the question of slavery is not the same thing as to say, well, the Qur'an is advancing slavery or sort of condoning slavery. I would say that quite clearly that's not the case. Well, quite clearly slavery exists, just in the same way as it's quite clear that war exists. We have slavery today. It's just, slightly obfuscated, but certainly effectively it's slavery. But, to say that the Qur'an is, condoning or advancing war as a good thing is not the case, but certainly it deals with war as something which happens and gives you a set of rules, to act on in that scenario. I would say in sort of software terms, the Qur'an deprecates slavery. It treats it as something which exists and certainly existed at the time of the revelation. However, the freeing of a slave is a meritorious act. So to say that the Qur'an condones slavery, I don't think is sustainable. To say that the Qur'an addresses slavery and treats it as a reality, I think is self-evident. So that's my position on it. I don't think it's very complicated. To continue. Those are in gardens honoured. And what ails those who ignore warning when they before thee are straining forward on the right and on the left in separate groups? Now it's quite clear that when, at the time of the revelation, Muhammad is conveying this revelation to people, they don't want to hear. And I think that's very true today. People, the vast majority of people really can't be bothered. What are you talking about? What does it matter? I just live my life, YOLO and all of that stuff. Just a quick point on this. What ails those who ignore warning that they before thee are straining forward? That sort of pushing forward. Again, we're going to rejoin this image towards the end of the surah. So let's continue. Before thee are straining forward on the right and on the left in separate groups. Does every man among them hope to be made to enter a garden of bliss? The fact of death, the fact of judgment, this doesn't suit most people. They think you're being you're being depressing when you point out to them that this sort of parties coming to an end. It's a bit easier now, perhaps, because, life in the sort of in this cult is not as great as it used to be, as we've all discovered. But generally, people don't want to know. They don't want to know because they don't want to take responsibility. This, do they all expect to be made to enter a garden? So you hear people, they believe in heaven. You say, do you believe in heaven? Most people, well, a lot of people believe in heaven. But you say, well, what about hell? Oh, they don't like hell. Hell doesn't suit them. Hell isn't, But hell and heaven, in my view at least, they're kind of part of the same thing. If the evildoer is not to be punished, then the doer of good can hardly expect a reward. It seems that these things kind of go together. And again, I go back to what I talked about earlier, is about the sort of the laws of nature, as they're called. We understand that things don't just, there is an effect. There's a cause, and then there's an effect. So that's how I see that anyway. No, indeed. Again, this is kalla, which in the Qur'an serves a logistical purpose, and I cover that in my notes. We have created them from what they know. And, this is a very tactful allusion to the sexual emission, which is a despised liquid, which the Qur'an calls it. Then do I swear by the Lord of the Easts and the Wests that we are able to exchange them for better than they, and we will not be outdone. Again, this alludes back to what we saw earlier in the Surah, the change in the physical universe, that God sustains. Rabbil Alameen. He's the sustainer, the sustainer, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, of the creation. So it's not just that the creation was created and God's gone on holiday. No, every single second this thing is being maintained, and once that shift happens, then it all shifts into something completely different. God could create the whole thing, for all of us. See, the difference between human beings and everything else is that we have the potential, at least, to acquire what's called agency. It's the ability to think ahead and plan ahead for something that hasn't happened yet. And that really is the fundamental DNA, if you want, of taqwa, of godly fear, of prudent fear. Because once this happens, there's no kind of going back and saying, oh, I'm sorry, as certain segments of the society today are encouraged to think that none of their actions have any sort of consequence, and that, the same people have to pay over and over and over again to help them, clamber over the bar. The fact is that we are all individually culpable for the choices that we make. Life isn't socialist. It isn't. It's a meritocracy, and you get what you deserve. That's it. And I can see why that's not a very popular position, but it's the Quranic one. Verse 42. So leave thou them to discourse vainly and play until they meet their day which they are promised. So once one has warned, once the messenger has warned, once he's brought this to people's attention, and if they turn away, what can you do? You leave them to play and to discourse vainly. Well, I can't think of a better analogy especially for the time we're living in now, where everyone is basically playing and talking nonsense, as far as I can see. That's their right. That's the prerogative. You can't impact that. But it doesn't affect. It says their day until they meet their day, which they are promised. There's cause and effect. There's just this thing called reality, and as unpopular as it might be, let's say I don't like it either, okay, but it doesn't make any difference. If you're on a train, you're heading toward a cliff, the track goes towards the cliff, that's where you're going. It's just, this is what's going to happen. So, perhaps it's better to take some sort of preemptive action. So leave thou them to discourse vainly and play until they meet their day which they are promised. The day they will come forth from the graves in haste, as though towards an idle running. Now this relates back to what we had earlier. at verse 36, then what ails those who ignore warning that they before thee are straining forward? So you've got a parallel in these two cases. Now, towards an idle running, just think how it is when, if you've ever seen people at a rock concert, when they're eventually allowed into the stadium and the group comes on, whoever it is, and you see these people surging forward. So the same people who turned away and were not interested, prior to this event that this surah talks about, after this event, this pivotal event in the life of all creation, once this happens, it says, so leave thou them to discourse vainly and play until they meet their day which they are promised. This is their day. The day they will come forth from the graves in haste, as though towards an idle running. So in that day, their lack of interest and so on, that's all gone. Okay? Now this is reality. Verse 44, their eyes humbled, humiliation covering them. That is the day which they are promised. So this is a promise. It's something which hasn't happened yet. And this is what agency is about. It's about understanding things that haven't happened yet and making preparation for them. That's what this surah is about, in my view. I can't see that there's much more to it than that, or at least not that I could cover it right now. My advice is that at any time, it's nothing to do, with the COVID or whatever, but none of us knows how long he's got. All we do know is that we are all going to the zinger, and the best that any of us can do is to make preparation for that, to do one's duty and to reach that inevitable, unavoidable goal or destination in the best possible condition, because the condition that you take with you to that inevitable destination is what you're going to be in for eternity. So really, if one's thinking about investment, what the best investment is, then it seems to me that this is it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this surah. I hope everyone is well, and that's all for now. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right-hand corner, or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Qur'anite Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop-down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Qur'an-alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop-down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.